Hello, and welcome to Witchy Woman Podcast. I'm your host, DaNae Sweet, and this is episode 140. Today, I am sharing a wonderful chat I had with Kalem Turner of Fortune by Kalem. We've had him on the show multiple times, and it's always so fun to have a good talk with him. He shares with us about Lenormand Cards. Now, I'm probably saying that wrong. If you notice in the interview, I totally avoid even saying that word because I know I'll fuck it up, but I knew I had to say it in the intro. Lenormand, I don't know. Anyway, they're a form of divination cards, and I am super intrigued. I have them in my Etsy shopping cart. I have a few decks in there. I just got to pick which one. So we're going to talk about that, how you can get a reading from him. He does palmistry, tarot, astrology readings, and the Lenormand decks as well. So probably butchering that. Anyway, let's first do some smoke cleansing and pull a card from our deck. Today, I'm using mugwort. No reason other than I just feel called to use it. My lungs feel a lot better, so we're going to go ahead and actually smoke cleanse this week. I can't find my matches, so we're just going to use a lighter. So sorry for it's not as like pleasing to listen to as like striking a match, but anyway. Also, my mugwort doesn't like crackle as much as something like rosemary or my lavender smoke sticks. But anyway, we are doing my computer and the mic and myself, kind of getting in touch with my my psychic self today. I think that's why I wanted to use this, just to kind of open up with some things. Open up that intuitive part of myself. I just picked up the deck, the Illustrated Herbiary Oracle Cards by Maya Toll, illustrated by Kate O'Hara. I'm like hooked on these. I got the Herbiary and the Bestiary, and I'm hooked on them. I love them so fucking much. So we're going to pull a card from there if I don't drop them all, because I totally just about did. Okay, so cutting once, twice, and 3 times. Let's see what we get. Ooh. So we have Burdock. This card is absolutely beautiful. So it shows some burdock, and it shows the beautiful root going down. So it's kind of like you can see the root in the earth. But it also has this beautiful hearth fire. So burdock root shows us the resources that we have to pull back or to call back to those beautiful memories that we have of when we were kids. Like, everybody has a certain memory, or I hope you do, of a certain memory that just makes you feel unburdened. Like, for me, that would be like me and my sister, like getting on our horses bareback because we didn't want to put on saddles because we were too little. We couldn't hoist them up there. Like catching our horses, going bareback, and just going riding. Like that was so freeing. We didn't think about our parents or any of the struggles we'll be having with our parents. If any of you grew up in a household where their parents did not get along very well, you understand what I mean? So that was freeing for us, just going out and doing that. And I feel like this card is saying, go back to your roots. Like, what is freeing for you? What memories are that for you? And your resources. This card says tap your resources. I think this is a couple different meanings. I think it also means, what are your resources now to help you? What and who have been with you from the beginning, through thick and thin? Those are the things and the people that you should be leaning on. It is okay to say you need help. It's okay to reach out to someone and say, I need some support today. I need somebody just to listen, or I need somebody to just let me hold their hand and we can watch scary movies together and veg out or whatever. I just need someone to be here for me in whatever capacity they're willing to be there. I feel like that's also what this card says. Burdock sticks to you. I don't know if you've ever been around it, but it kind of sticks to you. So I feel like that in itself is saying the things that are sticking to you, that have stuck with you, lean on those. Okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in the Coven. I changed some things. I know that was in one of the last episodes. Just want to, if you are a Coven member, make sure you're checking your Patreon emails. You're going to Patreon and checking that stuff out. I posted the spell a month for February, so you can go there. You can click on it. You can download it. You can take a screenshot of it. Keep it for yourself. That is for Amethyst and Citrine members. I had extended Coven members that were Citrine members, their readings that were 30 minutes, for every quarter. I extended that into February a little bit because I had COVID and had to push some readings back, but I did close that. So it was a use or lose it thing. So you're back to 15 minutes per month until the next quarter. Okay. What other Coven business? Oh, we had our next Coven chat for the podcast happened on Friday. It was so much fun. So that episode will be coming out so not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, because we're doing an every other Tuesday episode from now forward. It's a little easier for me. I think it gives everybody a chance to listen to the podcast, get caught up. We have a lot going on in the Coven. So it kind of gives everybody the chance to do some stuff. We can get caught up and it's easier on me too. I also, I want to say what I've been working on, but I can't say yet because I just don't feel like it's the day to do it. But stay tuned for some pretty big news. I've been working on something very, very hard. Actually, a couple things really, really hard. And I would like to release that news pretty soon. So stay tuned on my socials for that, at Witchy Woman Podcast on Instagram. And I'm on Twitter at DaNae _sweet_. And I'm on TikTok if any of y'all are there, at Witchy Woman Pod. And then we're on Facebook. If you want to join the free group, that's Witchy Woman Friends. Then we have a Coven, and you can join that by going to witchywomanpodcast.com and clicking on Join the Coven, okay? All right, let's get into the interview. Okay, so welcome back to the show. Do you want to tell us who you are, for those that don't know who you are, where to find you, like your socials or website or anything?
Sure. It's been a little while.
Uh-huh.
My name is Kalem Turner, Kalem, and my business is called Fortune by Kalem because it's primarily a fortune-telling business, and that's what we like to talk about most of the time. All forms of divination, but people can find me on Facebook and Instagram mainly. I do enjoy those. They're at Fortune by Kalem. But that's where to find me.
Yes. Okay, cool. So today we're going to talk. I can't even pronounce it because when I read it, it fumbles in my brain.
Everyone says it a little differently. Yeah, the French is not an easy language for some.
Yeah. So can you tell me what we're going to talk about so I don't murder the word?
I murder the word because I'm Scottish. I don't say it with a French accent. I don't try because I'll sound silly sometimes, but we're going to talk about Lenormand today.
Okay.
I think if you're trying to be French, you would say Lenormand or Lenormand. Okay. I studied French for 4 years and I never came across that word, so I'm not quite sure how to say it. But Lenormand cards, they're not as popular as tarot. But they are pretty old, and I find them to be extremely interesting. They're my favorite new thing. And they do have a bit of an odd history. The history is a little bit more tangible than that with tarot. Tarot is kind of bits and pieces, and it's scattered, and it goes back a long while. But Lenormand's only been around for a couple centuries, and it does have a nice kind of storyline to it. I mean, have you ever seen Lenormand cards before? These little guys.
Yes. I've seen them only because you showed me, but that's it.
Yeah. Maybe we can find a picture for people, but
Yes.
it's always going to be a 36 card deck. There's 36 cards, and they're not as big as tarot cards. They're actually more like playing card size. Or maybe poker card size. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
it's
play
kind of what
poker.
they look like to me.
Yeah, and they do actually have little playing card um inserts on them as well. So like here we've got the dog card, but it's also the 10 of hearts. Usually, at least in the traditional decks, it's always going to have a little bit of playing card insert with it. So I suppose there's like a little bit of French cartomancy in there as well, French card reading. But I find the way they started kind of fascinating. The first Lenormand deck we had in the world was not a Lenormand deck. It was called the Game of Hope, which just sounds very romantic.
Yeah, it does.
The year 1799 they would have been published, so that's kind of a romantic era, really.
Yeah.
But it was called the Game of Hope, and they were actually based on an older deck. And I believe they were called coffee cards. Have you ever heard of those? Coffee cards. I think those maybe came like a couple decades earlier. But the coffee cards were really images printed on cards, symbols, whether it be a tree or a cross or whatever it is, based on coffee ground reading, reading the coffee in your cup. And I think Lenormand is a little bit more like tea leaf symbology. A lot of it's very similar because actually, whether you're reading tea leaves or you're reading coffee grounds, whatever you're reading in the cup, often the same kind of set of symbols will come up or be interpreted. So I like to think of, the coffee cards are the coffee cards, and Lenormand is a little bit more based on tea leaf reading. But originally were not known as Lenormand. They were marketed as the Game of Hope in the year 1799. And it took a while for them to catch on. The name Lenormand comes from Marie Lenormand, Madame Lenormand, who I believe was the fortune teller to Napoleon. And his wife Josephine. So she was a pretty big deal in France during the kind of late 1700s to early 1800s. But it was really after her death, I think, in the 1840s, that Lenormand became popular because, we've got a kind of dead fortune teller celebrity. We might as well market that and name these cards after her, so they gain some kind of notoriety. But I don't actually think Marie Lenormand ever likely used the Lenormand cards. I mean, maybe she did. But I think, in her diaries and kind of like accounts and stuff, she was more of like a cartomancer, so reading playing cards or even reading tarot cards. Hard to say if she would ever get her hands on the Game of Hope before they were marketed for her. I hope she did. I hope she did have a deck.
Yeah.
But her possessions don't survive. So she has a fascinating life, though. I mean, she's maybe not too connected with the cards, but I'm always amazed that there's no movie or TV show about her. Like fortune tellers and Napoleon and all these amazing kind of people in French society, and there's not really any kind of anything written about her. I mean, I think there's maybe some written sources, but there's certainly no TV shows, movies, and I just think it would make a fantastic movie because there are accounts of her life, the fortunes that she told, and people that described her kind of I think she kind of set it up like a little library in her home, was her reading for reading cards. But she was also a published author on different kind of occult subjects. I think mainly divination with that one.
Ooh. Sounds romantic. I like that era just because everything was beautiful. It sounds, I don't know. It just sounds better than now. Most things do, though. At this point.
I think, Lenormand is such a European system these days. I think it's much in France, quite big in Germany as well. But I think it's making its way to the Western world, and rightfully so, because it's a very unique system. It's very different to tarot. I think tarot goes the way these days of a lot of people give advice with the cards, and there is prediction there, but it can be a little bit flimsy, or it ends up being more like holistic kind of advice or reading. But Lenormand is very literal, if you get the coffin card, something's going to end or someone's going to die. It's taken quite literally, and whilst the symbology could be interpreted differently. For example, in Lenormand we have the key card. Keys symbolically are important things. They're about gaining access, but it could also represent a real key, you know? So that's where the interpretation lies. Like, is it literal? Is the dog card just symbolic for friendship and loyalty, or is it your actual pet, your actual dog?
Right. Okay. That's
But
awesome.
that tends to be how it's read. You know, you'd be surprised at how blatant and literal the cards can actually be. I think knowing the kind of symbolism behind it helps, but that's where they can be interpreted differently. I do think Lenormand cards work better for psychics, for mediums especially, you know, because it's not exactly about knowing a book meaning or knowing a certain spread. It's more about like feeling into the symbology of the cards and seeing like a story with that. So they're absolutely wonderful. I'd recommend that you get some.
Yes. Well, it's funny because I have a friend who is a Christian witch. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but she is like kind of in the room closet, and she had texted me just a few days ago. She went on a trip, and she's like, I just got these cards from a metaphysical store, and I wanted to know what you thought of them. I'd never seen them before. And that's the deck that is this is what she picked. And I'm like, I've never played with them before. I've never tried them before, but I know what they are. And she absolutely loves them. Like, she has tarot decks and she has oracle decks, but she's been using them, you know, for a few days now. And she's like, you got to get your hands on a deck of these. These are amazing. So I'm sold.
Lenormand is actually, I would say it's much easier to learn than tarot, not just because there's like less than half the cards. And, you know, with the cards, it really is like a picture's worth 1,000 words. And there's so much room for interpretation. I don't think there is as much room for interpretation with Lenormand. Like, if I pulled a child card in a reading, it's always going to be the person's child, or it's always going to be a young person in their life. For sure, sometimes that might be like, you know, a new beginning or a fresh start, but like 95% of the time the cards kind of are what they are. It does become a little confusing when you get cards like the fish. Not everybody's super familiar with like fish symbology, you know. In Lenormand, people would say it's finances or it's alcohol, which kind of makes sense. I think more like in Chinese culture, the fish is kind of like a good luck symbol for finances. But we also have like expressions in the cards, you know, like drinks like a fish. It's kind of easy to remember in that regards, because you just apply it to your own life.
So do they all come with the same imagery, or is it like tarot where people will make different kinds of cards?
There are a lot of different kind of interpretations of the artwork. And I think, you know, some people would even slightly change what the card is. But generally they're the same 36 cards, it's the same symbols. I prefer the older ones, you know, I prefer the deck that kind of look a bit like old-timey, the sort of Dondorf German kind of style decks with the playing card inserts, but you do get a wide variety, the same as tarot, because you know, it's been around for a while now, and people are always going to interpret the art in their own way and kind of see.
Okay, so do you offer this as a service or in person, or is it an online thing too?
Always both. You know, it's kind of different to tarot. Tarot, we have lots of different spreads, you know, and I always encourage people to make up their own. Like, when I do tarot card readings, I make up my own spreads, and it's more to give like a timeline. With Lenormand, there's actually only 3 traditional spreads.
Oh, yay.
And I have seen people kind of like make up their own kind of stuff to do different kinds of spreads and their own ways of reading them. But I do think it's a lot more traditional. You know, it's a lot more like, this is what we do. Here are the 3 spreads. One of the most common spread out of all of them is actually using the entire deck. It's called a grand tableau.
Okay.
So I think translating from French, that would be like a royal table or a big table. And you just lay all the cards out. There's 36 cards in the deck. There's different ways to do it. I'd always do 4 rows of 9 cards, so it kind of looks even. And it ends up looking like a big puzzle. And you can read every single card. Personally, I don't, because we would be there all day.
Yeah.
But each card would then kind of represent a different area of life.
Okay.
For example, the very first card in the deck is the Rider card. The Rider is all about news. It's kind of what's coming into your life. Sometimes it's about young men or horses, because that's something literally in the card. But then you would kind of interpret the positions of the cards. So the very first card, because card number 1 is the Rider, whatever's coming up as the first card is kind of mixed with the Rider. So like I've pulled a spread here and I've got the Sun card. The Sun is obviously really positive. It's about success. So that would be about success kind of coming your way, or good news kind of coming your way. The second card being the Clover. Clover is very symbolic of good luck. Whatever card you draw second, that's going to be your area of good luck. So for me, it's the Ship card, which is apparently travel. Or again, it would kind of match the first one, like good luck coming your way, but it would also be good luck in traveling. And there's different sort of techniques that you can use with that spread, but I think people get overwhelmed by it, you know, like laying out 36 cards and thinking, where do I start?
Right.
But it's a lot simpler than you would think. And then you can move into different techniques like mirroring. That's one I like to use. Or you can keep the small spreads, you know, just pull 3, 5, or 7 cards in a row and just read it like a storyboard. That's where I think people should really explore to kind of get creative with it. You know, think in terms of storytelling with that, because fortune telling really is storytelling. Just that the story hasn't happened yet because it's the future.
Yes. To me, this seems a lot. I like that there's the main spreads. There's only, like you said, there's only a few, because I get overwhelmed, because I will make up my own, but I'm like, oh, I want to find a tarot spread to look at a situation. I will spend way too much time on the internet trying to find a spread that I think I want, because it's just overwhelming. It's too many choices. I like the basic stuff, because then I don't have so much time to waste on trying to make a decision, because that's just me. I will overthink something to death.
I mean, the Lenormand spreads are really simple. I think the Grand Tableau, because it's the most popular one, using all 36 cards and laying it out, that can be intimidating for people, but you can start with 3 cards. You can start with 3 cards and just work on kind of combining those into a story, and then 5, and then 7. It always tends to be odd numbers with the strings. The string is the first spread that you would learn. So it'd be 3 cards in a row, or 5 cards in a row, or 7 cards in a row. I don't think many people would do beyond that, beyond the 7 cards. But the other spread you can kind of work on is a square. And that's just 3 cards in a row, 3 beneath that, and then 3 beneath that. And you can read it in many different ways. You know, you can read it from left to right. You can read it kind of up and down. So there can be like 6 different stories in there. You know, it's not just one spread for one story. The big difference with the spreads are, I think with tarot, you kind of assign meaning to the position. So we'll say, this is where your past is, this is where your present and future is, this is the advice, this is, you know, influences or career or whatever. It's not like that with Lenormand. The actual position of the cards aren't assigned like it's this area of life. You would dictate which area of life it is by which cards come up. Or if you're looking at the Grand Tableau spread, you know, those are kind of dictated. So position number 14 would relate to the Fox card, because the Fox relates to career. That would be your career card there. So I think it's a little bit simpler than tarot, but it's kind of hard for people to grasp if it's not explained. It's hard to do without visuals, maybe. But it is a lot simpler than people would think. And I think that's the best way. The best way to read fortunes. Keep it simple. Keep it plain.
I like the idea of this a little bit better for me, because there's less. I like the idea that the cards are literal. They're more literal, and there's less time for me to overthink what that card means for me.
I mean, there's a lot of it, but I mean, take for example the book card. So we've got number 26, the book. What are books symbolic of? Books are really symbolic of education. of study. That would be an easy connection for people to make. But this also comes up as a book. The amount of writers that I get in this card is just so significant when they're having a reading. But you can interpret it beyond it. It is good to get your imagination going. It's often said that the book kind of represents secrets because it's a closed book. It would be kind of secret stuff or even occult stuff going on. But really, it would relate to education because it is quite literally a book right there.
I like that.
Yeah, so I think it's a lot easier if you take that kind of simple-minded approach. A snake is never going to be a positive thing in Lenormand.
Right.
It's just a snake, Could be a literal snake, but more often or not, that's a person. And in Lenormand, it's usually assigned this little card, the club, with a younger female usually with that one. So very literal. I mean, you can read the playing card inserts as well if there's a little person there. The lily is kind of associated with an older man because there's an older man on the card. So it doesn't even have to just be the symbol. It can be the little playing card insert as well, which is helpful.
I'm gonna have to give me some of these. they to me I've always had a hard time with the fortune telling part of cards because I think most of what I do is telling people about their past. I tell you know what I mean, and I think this to me is a little more literal, and I think it would be easier for me to let go of the past stuff, the things that I'm like, well, to me, when I do a reading, I tend to start thinking about what this person has done in their past, or if a deceased person comes through, then I will start listening to them, and that affects the reading for me if I'm doing a tarot reading. So to me, this seems a little bit more literal and leaves me a little less time to think about what I normally do, which is diving into someone's past. I don't usually dive into their future.
Lenormand isn't really designed for the past. There is, I have noticed that it can come up with the past. For example, in the Grand Tableau, there are significator cards. There's a man card and a lady card, so it's very gendered, and you can kind of pick which one you want to be. But often in the readings, it's said, so they kind of face one way, especially the lady card. So if she's facing off to the right, it's kind of said that everything behind her would be the past, and then forward would be the future. I don't really read like that. I read everything in the spread as the future, because especially if you got the lady card like way on the right-hand side, then the whole reading would be about the past. I don't necessarily think that covers it, but you can see love life a couple of different places in the spread. So recently I saw someone, and in front of the lady there was kind of positive love life, but behind it was negative. So I was like, okay, well, this obviously isn't the same thing, but because it's behind her, that must be behind her quite literally again. And the thing in front of her is what's coming, but mostly it would be entirely future, especially if you're doing a smaller spread, like the string or the square with that one, that would cover future. It's just in the Grand Tableau because the positioning can be a little bit insightful, shall we say. Can bring in a little bit of past and future, but it really is designed for the future, I think. Same with tea leaves, just taking it back to that, it's always thought of as fortune telling or divination going forward to the future, rather than tarot, which tries to give you that kind of holistic, this was the past, this is the present, and this is where you're going.
Yes. I actually I was in an antique shop when we went up to South Dakota, and I was looking at I don't know why, but I'm drawn to tea sets now. I don't know if it's my inner child, I don't know, but I'm like, ooh, tea sets. And then I'm like, maybe I should read tea. So I've been looking up online, how to read tea leaves. And I've got my eye on a couple really cute, tea leaf reading cup and saucers on Etsy. I know I shouldn't buy any more new shit this month, but it's in my cart ready to hit the push, buy button. It just seemed really interesting, the imagery, and
old tea leaf sets. So I've got a couple of antique ones, and they really remind me of Lenormand, because often they're kind of laden with playing card symbology on them, like it's on the saucer. And again, you're looking for the same symbols. So if you're if you're one of those people who wants to read tea leaves, and you're like, I wouldn't know what I'm looking for. Like, what does that blob look like? I don't know. Get yourself a Lenormand card set and compare it to the cards and say, does that look like a cross? Does that look like a ship? Does that look like you know, whatever it is? And that can also give you ideas, because it's where it came from. So it's helpful in that regard. When you learn the symbology of Lenormand, you can apply that symbology to other things in your life, whether it be tea leaves or coffee grounds, or even just like reading signs, reading omens out in the world, you know. You'll start to see these objects or these concepts or these animals or whatever it is in the cards. You'll start to see that manifest out in your life. Sometimes I play a game when I'm bored, and I did it recently. How many Lenormand cards can I spot in the real world? Like on a bus journey. It was only like a half-hour bus journey, and I think I got like 17 of them.
Oh my gosh!
I was like, well, that person has a dog, and you know, there's a house, and there's a small child, and there's a bookstore, so that kind of covers the book. Like, it really went through a lot of them. So these cards really make up our everyday lives, which is why they're so great at predicting specific things. You know, and if you're taking a big spread like the Grand Tableau, it is designed to predict everything in one go. You know, love life or career or home life if you're moving, the finances, even things like family and health. I don't like to read health with the cards, but we do kind of relate the tree card to both family and health. So it's amazing how much you can get from one spread. I just think it's a little bit more, tarot is more versatile in that you can mold it to what you want to be. But I think Lenormand gives incredible specific detail that you just wouldn't get from tarot.
Right. I like that. That makes the idea that I could get a very specific thing for my client or for myself makes me feel a little bit more secure about doing a reading with those cards.
One thing that I'd say is really great about them is in tarot, we tend, I mean, I do just because I do, but I think people shy away from reading the court cards as literal people. They want to read it, you know, always as the seeker or as like a kind of state of being or experience. But because there's less, let's say, court cards, you know, there's a person card and a partner card, and that's the man and woman, or vice versa. And there's also the bear card and the lily card, which is really mother and father in that regard. So it's specific into who it is, you know. If you pull the Empress in tarot, you're not really going to know if it's a female you're reading for. Is this the person you're reading for? Is it their mother? Is it an experience? Is it someone else in their life? You know, when it comes to the Lenormand, it's just going to be their mom. It's just going to be their mother. There's not as much room for interpretation, and so you can be more confident in being specific.
I gotta do this. You know what we should do? We should do a reading, not now, because I know this is like me just being very, very caffeinated. But we should do a reading. I'll get a reading from you and then have you explain it. And maybe we could do that like for the Coven or something like that, so they can see how it works. And that would be like a good visual.
It would be kind of like a mini class, because we really do need the visuals for that. So it maybe wouldn't be great for the podcast, but maybe we could get the video and put it on YouTube. Just because it would mean I'd be able to explain like the techniques, like mirroring. If anyone's wondering what mirroring is, it's just when you lay the 36 cards out in 4 rows of 9. So it looks like a kind of puzzle. I like to think of it as. And you imagine that you fold the puzzle in half, either down the middle, either way, so vertically or horizontally. And any card that would touch in that hypothetical fold, you would combine their meanings. Because Lenormand is always about combining meanings. You can't really draw one card and draw a prediction from it. You know, it's a bit of a dramatic example, but like that coffin card, which I'm sure people are really scared of, number 8, if you just draw that on its own, you know, that what you're going to say about that is, you know, it's a death, it's an ending. But about what? You would need some following cards. Do you need to know if that's an ending of, your job because it's followed by the fox? Do you need to know if it's followed by the dog because it's a friendship ending, or it's possibly someone leaving this life? You need to have those extra cards for interpretation. It's not like tarot where you would just pull one on its own. Generally, you would need three or more to make a kind of story out of it.
Okay, that makes sense. Maybe we can do something. We'll have to talk when we get done, but like that just popped in my head. I'm like, I would like to have some kind of visual for at least the coven or somebody to like see what's going on so they can appreciate the cards, because
it's hard to do with words. I mean, I think people really need to see it manifested, kind of like all laid out, so they can get a good grasp of it. But it's really not as complicated as it sounds. It really, really isn't. You can Google like grand tableau mirroring, and that's just one kind of technique for it. Actually, the oldest way of reading Lenormand, it's not about that whatsoever. So you would still lay out all of the cards, but then you would seek the person card, so either the man card or the lady card, depending on who you're reading for, because it's again very gendered. And you would just look at the cards around that. You would look at the cards that surround that and say that is the most prominent. Those are the most prominent influence on the life. And this was, years ago, a couple of centuries ago, back before you would really combine the card meanings to give more details, because people expect details now, and if you want that with Lenormand, you need 3 or 4 or 5 cards. But we would take it a little bit more literally back then. And it would be maybe a little bit more basic. So it's good that we've kind of developed these techniques that mainly come out of Europe. They're kind of European techniques and different ways of reading. So not everybody can grasp it right away, but they're a fantastic way of looking at it. And I actually think reading Lenormand is going to change the way that I read tarot a little bit, because often people, when they read tarot cards, they read them in isolation. They read like, this card is for this one, and that's that, and then this one is over here, so this is something else. But I like to think of it more as like a linear kind of story network or a timeline with things. It's maybe not great for timing, Lenormand. You're not, even though each card does kind of have an association, like the lily is associated with winter, and I do find that one works quite well. Or the moon card is associated with monthly, or in a month's the next kind of moon cycle, so 28 days. There is that, but determining which card is the actual timing significator, that's tricky with these spreads. I always just kind of think to myself that I'm focusing on the next year, the next 12 months. So I always say to people, if it's not this year, then it's going to be next year, because we can spill over into next year with 12 months. But I'd always say just, pick your own kind of timing before it happens, because I don't think it's a great idea to ask Lenormand. You could shuffle and say, when is this going to happen, and pull one card and see what kind of associations of time you would have with that. But I don't think it works well for that. I do think tarot kind of has the better part in that.
Better with timing. So you could say, I wanted to know about, because I plan in quarters, like fiscal and kind of like seasonal quarters. Like that's how I plan things. So if I wanted to do like a quarter, like what's up for the next quarter, I could do a spread for the next quarter instead of like the whole year.
You just ask, when I'm shuffling, I just say to myself, like, it's for the next 12 months of this person's life. Or you could just say for the next 3 months or whenever. I do think the timing interestings are interesting with the cards. For example, the heart card is associated with Valentine's Day. So if you're around Valentine's Day, the scythe card is associated with Halloween. So it'd be around Halloween. But I do think that is tricky, and you are pigeonholing yourself into being really specific, and you'd have to figure out which card you're really going to dictate as the timing designator. I think it's better to just give, a kind of time period ahead, whether it's the next quarter or it's the next year, whatever it may be. You could even do it for the upcoming day. You could pull a few cards for the upcoming day. That totally works. And that's a great way to kind of learn it day by day, learn by experience. I recommend that for tarot as well.
Yeah. I tend to pull, like, it's just part of my morning routine, like grab my coffee, try to wake up, go in my office, turn on my plant lights, and draw a card or see what the day is going to be like. Sometimes I feel like it's helpful, and sometimes I feel like it pisses me off and sets the tone for the day. So
always best to have a clear head when you're doing it, but it's good preparation at the very least.
It is.
And especially with Lenormand, I do find that some people just don't know what it means. They don't know what it means. So I'm like, well, pull it out and leave it. Leave it just there for the day, a few cards. And then at the end of the day, you can go back and think, well, how did my day, turn, fishy? Was there alcohol involved? Was there money involved?
Yes.
Which parts of the cards apply to my day? And I think learning symbology as well, it's something really amazing, not just in divination, but in magic, in any kind of witchcraft, learning what symbols really bring. That's an excellent kind of way of looking at life, because learning how to read Lenormand isn't just about reading Lenormand cards. It's about learning to read symbolism and therefore omens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm big, because I think I'm so visual. Symbols are a huge part of my practice to begin with. I use them in spells, and they're drawn everywhere in this house. Like, we're getting up. So we're going to sell this house this year. And so I'm going around the house, and I have painted symbols like on the walls of this house. And I have to go over and find all of them. They're painted in like a shade lighter or darker than the actual paint. So I've had to I'm like, shit, where did I paint that? I'm like going through and undoing what I've done, and it's taking forever. But yes, I digress. Symbology is an important thing, I think, for anybody who wants to work in the occult to begin with.
And beyond occult, it's very creative. It's very, very creative. I mean, I'm looking at the whip card right now. Nobody likes a whip. It's kind of very symbolic of abuse and kind of difficulty, but in modern Lenormand anyway, we also see it as sex. Could even go as far as BDSM, or just repetition's a big one with the whip rather. So it's about thinking about things in a different light as well. I think it's an excellent kind of creative exercise if you just want to get yourself a deck Lenormand and think, how many meanings can I come up with this card?
Right.
It's great to kind of have that background, especially when you become a little bit more intuitive or psychic with it. But there are some cards, for me anyway, that the meaning just won't change. It just won't. Like the Stork card. What does the Stork bring? The Stork is always, it's either going to be a pregnancy or a migration.
Right. Yeah.
Very occasionally change, it could mean change, but it's always someone's moving home or somebody's getting pregnant. Like the Stork is a very straightforward symbology.
You. I don't want the Stork to show up in any of my shit. Then
it's good for change, if you see it in the kind of home position, that person's usually going to be moving home, but it means different things in different kind of, we call the positions of the Lenormand spread the grand tableau houses. So the house of the rider would be the first card because it's the first card. The house of the cross would be the last card because card number 36, the last card, is the cross. So that's a good way to kind of remember it.
I love that. I think I want to get a deck. I've just had so much going on. And my ADHD is I think being cooped up with COVID, doubled down on all my attention issues. I decided I wanted to do this, and this, and this as soon as I felt better, and I forgot I was going to get a deck. So I
do recommend you get the smaller ones.
Yeah.
The traditional Lenormand. I think there are some that do bigger. But the small is best because if you're using a whole spread, it's not always going to fit on every kind of table if they are large cards. I do prefer the more traditional looking decks. I think they read better. I think they're more beautiful. But you can also get Lenormand cards that are kind of styled like tarot decks. Like there's kind of one-styled in the Pamela Coleman Smith style, the Rider-Waite Smith tarot cards. But I think that's where I think you have to be careful there because you can easily get blended. There are a few cards in Lenormand that are named the same as tarot, but they are different meanings. So it's actually the astrology cards, so the stars, the moon, and the sun. The numbers are different there a little bit, and the meanings do change as well from tarot to Lenormand. So that's also a great exercise in getting to think about things differently.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. A good exercise for my brain. That'd be good. That'd be really good. I think I'm like looking down at my space here to my right is where I like doing everything on the floor. Like when I sit down, I do everything on the floor. I put all my cards on the floor when I do big spreads, when I do spells, ritual, all that is on the floor. So I'm like looking down, I'm like, I could totally like put out all my cards there and be really cool.
Definitely floor witches. You do not need like a big reading table. I mean, I just don't currently have a table that's big enough or suitable enough for like big spreads like this. So I always use my nice red rug.
Yeah, the floor, I can sit down. It's usually after when I draw cards for myself. It's usually after I've meditated, and I meditate over there too. So I'm already kind of like in a good space. So it makes sense for me. So are you going to offer classes on this at some point?
I'm not going to offer any classes on it just at the moment because I think it's difficult to do without visuals. And I'm just not in a position for that. I work too much. I am still offering palmistry classes right now, but I've decided not to offer group classes anymore because when I teach, I did notice like there are people who will take courses, and if you're not one-on-one with them, they're not going to commit to it. They're not going to have that same fire. They're not going to get the same interaction or the same level from you. So I will do one-on-one classes for palmistry, and I think tarot again in the future. Not for Lenormand just now, simply because of the visuals. Simply because I don't have the kind of facilities or the time actually for a course. But I don't think it would take people long to learn, and I do think it's really important. If you want to learn Lenormand, get to know the symbols and get to know how to combine the cards. Just get to know how to combine them. Think about, how you would take, for example, let's look at two. So just come up with different ideas. So here we've got the birds card. You see the birds. What are the birds really symbolic of? They're symbolic of communication. The birds are always kind of chirping. In Lenormand, we also think of them as online or social media. But you can't really say to someone, oh, there's social media in your future, or you're going to be talking in the future, that doesn't really make sense. So you would then combine it with another card. So say you got it with the ship card. So this would be talking with someone abroad, someone overseas. Or talking about kind of travel plans in that regard. Keep it simple and just think how to combine on those little ways. And that's exactly how you read Lenormand. It's that simple. And for some people, it's going to be easier than others. And some predictions come easier than others. If you get the love part card next to the ring card, that's going to be pretty obvious. That's going to be someone's relationship kind of becoming committed or coming full circle to the next level. But if you got the love card with, say, let's pick one. So the mice. Do we know much mice symbology? What are mice symbolic of? They're not actually a great omen in Lenormand. They're more to do with stress or illness or things decreasing. But you might not know that. You might think, oh, I love mice. I mean, I love mice. I haven't had pet rats before, but I've always wanted one. So you have to think about how is it interpreted in a more worldly sense. What are rats symbolic of? They're symbolic of disease. They're symbolic of vermin. But depending on your own personal interpretation, that might be colored a little bit. But I don't think you can change the meaning of Lenormand cards necessarily, like you might do with tarot, to kind of fit your own narrative, which is what people like to do a lot of the time.
Well, yeah. Fit it to make it work.
Yeah. But that's all it is. It's really thinking about the cards, sometimes in a literal, sometimes a symbolic sense. You can let your intuition kind of decide. And
Okay.
it's important that it does make sense, you know? If it doesn't make sense in the kind of literal way, choose a symbolic way. If it's not making sense that way, it might be more literal. And then it's just combining the cards and reading it in a row, or reading it in this larger kind of spread that makes
Right.
it easier for combining as well.
Nice. Well, where can you repeat where people can maybe book a session, a reading with you with those cards?
Well, it would just be Facebook or Instagram, Fortune by Kalem. People can email as well,
Okay.
fortunebykalem@gmail.com. I don't really like to email readings unless it's a palm reading or astrology reading, because that's a little bit differently. I think with card readings, whether it be tarot or Lenormand, it should be a little bit more interactive. It's nice to actually talk to the person, rather than just send an email. But I do readings through any kind of medium, Instagram,
Okay.
WhatsApp, Facebook. It's all there.
Okay, cool beans. I will make sure that I link all of that in the show notes, and then also I post it to the groups so that they can get a hold of you and get a reading. I think I've had every kind of reading that you offer. Let me think. Because we kind of did a short, didn't we?
We did a palm reading for the group once.
Yeah,
and
we've done
I don't remember what else. But you know what would be so fun? If we did a Lenormand reading together.
Okay.
I'll kind of talk it through with you, but
Okay.
I'd love to just get a medium's take on the cards, because they really are, connective to spirit in that way, because spirit really speaks through, for most people or for a lot of mediums, through symbols. They're going to put an image in your head of something, and that's going to be for you to kind of interpret. The same as if you're reading tea leaves or a crystal ball, anything like that. So it'd be really cool to get a kind of a different take on it as well.
I'd love that. I think that would be a lot of fun. I've been doing, speaking like different takes on things, I've been doing wax readings, like for myself, not for anybody else.
Yeah.
Like after I do,
the shape of the wax.
Like I was doing some workings and I wanted to know a little bit more, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do some wax readings, and because I know that other people do it, and I'm like, I'm gonna try it and just do it my way.
Yeah. Lenormand, learning the Lenormand cards will help with that. Again, any kind of symbology. Someone asked me recently, have you ever read ink in water? Like, get like a bowl of water and dip the ink in it and then read the kind of shapes that must produce. And I just thought, that sounds so beautiful. Like, I would love to do that. I'm not amazing at spotting things quickly if they're fleeting. But that's why I would never read something like fire. It just gets sore eyeballs. But if it was Lenormand or tea leaves or anything like that, that stays in place, so you can actually take your time to look at the symbol. That's where it comes in handy.
Oh, I like that. We'll have to figure out how to do my take on this whole thing, and you show me your magic. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again. I always love chatting with you. We always go way off topic. This time, I think we stayed pretty good. I reined myself in.
Well, the thing is, Lenormand does apply to different kind of things as well. So it is relevant, to talk about tea leaves and kind of symbols and all that kind of stuff, because that's how it goes. It's just it falls under that category.
It does. Well, thank you. I appreciate this so much.
Thanks for having me.
Again, I want to say thank you to Kalem for coming on the show again. I absolutely love each time that he comes on. We always have something fun to talk about. If you would like to get a reading from him, please visit his socials. I will post those in the show notes. I'll share them in the groups. I will share that on Instagram as well. So check him out. I cannot wait to get a hold of some of those cards and kind of see what we can do with those. So if you would like to, please, because we've got some issues on social media lately with certain terms like witchcraft and spirituality and the occult and tarot being blocked. Like, It's an algorithm thing. But anyway, that has been an issue across Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok with our kind of content being suppressed. So if you could please leave a review on wherever you listen to this podcast, I would highly appreciate it. I can start reading them. If you leave a review, I will try to hunt them down and start reading them at the end of each podcast. So, if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. It would help visibility for the podcast since social media has decided to kind of get rid of all things triggering, which evidently is witchcraft and spirituality. There's a whole bunch of other things getting censored. I today looked at Instagram and tried to make an ad, and somebody had said I watched a video and they said that all things political, all things Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, Wicca, witchcraft, tarot, all these things have been taken off as interests, the categories. So when you set up an ad or target the algorithm, those are no longer even on there, and they are not. I looked up all those things. They are not. So that's being, it's kind of a backhanded way of being shadow banned, all things. So even your Christian creators are having the same issues. So if you could just review the podcast on wherever you're listening to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you're at, please leave a review and I will start reading them online. I would really appreciate it. Anywho, another thing is that I'm going to have to start, I will still be on all of these platforms. I'll still be on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, but I'm going to also start posting more things on YouTube because they don't seem to play the political crap as much. So I may start posting a little more actual videos of me and guests and things like that on there. So stay tuned for that. I just got to figure out a better way to edit because I kind of suck at that. So I'm going to be learning more about that. So anyway, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your week. And as always, stay witchy. Bye-bye.